All right, everyone. Today we are here at the Paranormal Roadtrippers Gallery. Did I say that correctly?
The Nightmare Gallery,
The
yes.
Nightmare Gallery here in Somerset, Kentucky. And with me is owner and the host, Mr. Zach Bales. Zach has been collecting a lot of really, really cool different memorabilia for several years, and he's opened his museum up to the public. And he was really kind enough to let us come in today and give us a little bit of history about Souls Chapel. As you know, we have just produced our film, Souls Chapel, that's going to be streaming everywhere April 4th. But now we want to take some time and actually go into a little bit more of the real world and real life legends of Souls Chapel. So, Zach, thank you so much for doing this today. What can you tell us about Souls Chapel?
For years, Souls Chapel has been considered to be one of, if not the most haunted locations in South Central Kentucky, if not really the entire state of Kentucky. Here at the Nightmare Gallery, we get guests all the time from outside of town, sometimes outside of state, sometimes outside of the country. But one of the reasons that some of them come to this area is because they've heard of this place, Souls Chapel. They've heard of these legends, the ghosts that are said to wander amidst the headstones out there. And so they put Somerset on their map of destinations that they'd like to vacation to. And that we're proud to keep the legends alive here and to share the stories that we've heard and some of what we've experienced at that location as well.
All right. Now that sounds really cool. So, what can you tell me in your own personal experience? Now, you've been to Souls Chapel
Oh
on the
yes,
grounds.
yes.
Yeah.
Most people interested in the paranormal, if you grow up in this area of Kentucky, this is a place you grow up hearing about, and it's a place that I don't know, it draws ghost hunters like moths to the flame.
Yeah. So I mean, whenever we first heard the actual background or the proposed background about Souls Chapel, immediately I was like, man, this would make a really cool film. Of course, we took a little bit of liberty, but everyone in the area has always said that there's something just very strange about the grounds of Souls Chapel. Now, to differentiate, guys, the movie is spelled Souls, Souls. The real life version of Souls Chapel, if you're looking for it, is Soules,
Mhm.
and it is actually located in Somerset, Kentucky. It's a real place you can visit. I don't think that the actual ground is still standing anymore. The actual church,
Yes.
yes, it's no longer there, but the cemetery is there, and guys, it is full of afterlife, so to speak. I personally have never been there, but Zach has. What can you tell me about your own personal experience when you were at Souls Chapel?
I've experienced a lot of things. Ghost hunters, I don't know what it is about ghost hunting, but the ghost hunters are drawn to going places after dark. Not that paranormal activity is more apt to happen after dark. It just, maybe it just sets the tone. But yeah, I've been there many late nights at Souls Chapel over the years. And I've had a lot of experiences, unusual experiences. Matter of fact, one of my very first paranormal experiences. This would have been way back in 2005, so many years ago, when I just kind of gotten into exploring the unusual, the unknown, and the otherworldly. I had experienced something there at Souls Chapel in the form of an EVP. Are you familiar with the idea of an EVP?
Yeah, and I think most of our viewers know what that is, but just for those that don't, can you explain what that is for us?
An electronic voice phenomena is what EVP stands for. There's been a theory in ghost hunting for years that if you take a digital audio recorder into a purportedly haunted location and you hit play record and you ask a series of questions, sometimes when you play back the tape and the aftermath of each of those questions, you might hear a whispered voice, a response from beyond the grave, answering your question. Not always. Sometimes you might get bits and pieces, sentence fragments that don't necessarily answer your question, but they're still pretty spooky. I actually recorded the very first EVP I had ever recorded. Had been ghost hunting for months ahead of time, but never had gotten one quite as charged as the one that we recorded that night back in September of 2005. It was 3 words that we'd recorded here in this dark cemetery. And you really need to understand Souls Chapel is not like a downtown cemetery. It's off the beaten path. Pretty far from the nearest street lights, pretty far from the nearest home, really, of the night. It's very dark, very spooky. The ghost stories that circulate around about the place don't certainly hurt the idea that it's kind of place you want to look over your shoulder, I guess, and hearing ears focus in on every noise. But as we were there in that cemetery that night and we'd recorded this 3-word message, it caused us to, well, we got out of there. We threw our bags back in our car and we sped off. And before this, we'd considered ourselves fearless. But when you hear these three words, when you hear the words, "I'm watching you," on a digital audio recorder, after you ask if there's anyone here tonight, it, it's enough to scare anybody. I don't care how fearless you think you are. And yeah, we threw our stuff in the car. We threw our computer, our digital audio recorder, and everything else we'd had with us that night, and we got out of there.
Man, I can't say I'd blame you. Now, could you guys imagine to hear those words, "I'm watching you"? And for those of you that have seen the film, we took some loose liberties on the film. We do play a little bit into, there was the legend has it there was a reverend who had done some, I guess what you would say, demonic and or paranormal activities on the grounds, which Zach's going to tell us about that. But if you guys heard the words, "I'm watching you," let us know in the comments. Would you stick around or would you get out of there? Because even the best of ghost hunters, as we can see, that would be enough to scare me. And I got to tell you, man, I get the heck out of there too. So, I mean, you don't have to feel too bad. And I think most of our viewers here, they would agree with me as well. But yeah, you guys drop it in the comments and let us know, would you stay or would you get out of there? What can you tell us a little bit about the history of Souls Chapel, the real world history, and how kind of this lore came to be?
Well, Souls Chapel itself originated more than 200 years ago at this point. It was a Methodist church way back when, named after Bishop Soul with the Methodist Church, and congregation visited every Sunday. You know, everybody was there. Unfortunately, though, at the time of the Civil War, the congregation sort of split. Half of them supported the Union's cause in the war, half of them supported the Confederacy's cause in the war. They ended up breaking up, and in the years that followed, the chapel itself sort of fell into ruin. You know, not having a congregation there every Sunday, that's enough to probably happen to a place. Well, after the war was over, the congregation ended up getting back together, but when they reconverged their efforts, they actually moved not far from Souls Chapel to another place called Bradley's Chapel, and that's where they continued, applying their religion. Well, in the centuries that followed, literally centuries that followed, the grounds sort of started to decay. The church itself was old; it was abandoned. The cemetery itself, started to crumble as well. If you go out there today, it's just a shell of what it once was. The chapel itself has since burned down, not because of natural causes or ghostly causes for that matter either. It was actually a couple of teenagers who had went out there about 20 years ago and decided to, I don't know why, people do what they do, but they burned down the church. But in the decades that followed, the church being fully abandoned, according to legend, a lot of unsavory sorts sort of visited the site, started making use of the old building, the cemetery itself, for some rather dark practices. According to legend, there was a lot of, I don't know, I hate to throw the word around a lot because I feel like it always factors into these kind of folklore stories, but devil worshippers and these sorts sort of use the sites for their own ceremonies and whatnot. If you had visited the site when the chapel itself was still there, if you went inside, there were pentagrams and all sorts of other symbols and the like. They were spray painted on the walls, the floor, and it gave the place kind of a reputation. And over the years, people started to associate Souls Chapel with a haunting. People who went out there late at night would claim that they would see things, that they would hear things. One particularly poignant story about Souls Chapel features a girl in a white dress. This is something I've heard from I don't know how many people who visited there. A girl in a white dress sort of wandering among the tombstones late at night. I've heard from, as I said, hundreds of people who've had experiences out there. I've had my own. Enough to where I would say there's definitely something going on out there, some sort of a haunting. As far as the reverend side of the story goes, there have been stories that have spun off of the Souls Chapel legend over the years that have involved a reverend of sorts. Still to this day, if you go into the corner of the Souls Chapel cemetery, there is a gravestone for Reverend Powell, I believe is the fellow's name. Again, according to legend, he was a pretty nasty fellow and had done some pretty nasty stuff. Nasty fellows do nasty stuff, I guess, and the story's kind of spun off from there. I don't know. I can't vouch for the authenticity necessarily of all of what's been said of this fellow. He very well may have been a good guy in life, and it may just be urban legend and that sort of thing that came out of it. So for fear of slandering his name, I won't necessarily tell too much about what are the nasty things that this guy was said to be involved in, because you never know in a town like Somerset. There very well could still be family of this guy out there all these years later.
Yeah, so that is actually some of the liberties we took in the film. We don't necessarily call him by name, but we do take liberties with the lores of the Reverend, the girl in the white dress who wanders among the tombstones, and everyone who's seen this film or who is planning to watch it. Remember, guys, it's April 4th. You can check it out all over streaming sites, Tubi. Roku, pretty much all the streaming sites you can check it out. But we took a lot of liberties in the film itself. So it's really cool to actually kind of hear some of the true lore and the true legends and things that are surrounded by this here in the Somerset area. So if you guys are ever in the area and you want to go check out Souls Chapel, you can definitely Google it, check it out on the internet, and it'll lead you right to there. And you had mentioned the building's no longer there; it's been burned down. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. For many years, the building was gone, but the foundations were still there. But just recently, the foundations themselves were finally removed by the Methodist Church. I think they're in an effort to try to fix the location up a little bit. So that's just rumor as well. But there's been a lot of work done out there. I'll put it like that over the years. So who knows? Maybe there'll be another Souls Chapel one of these days.
Will there be another Souls Chapel, guys? That's a really good question. Let us know what you think about there. Should there be another Souls Chapel?
Never leave Souls Chapel, please.